It's my pleasure to introduce Tyler Izzo. Before I call him up, Tyler caught my eye earlier in the year with his interesting choice in heavy metal t-shirts and rock and roll stickers and patches. And definitely, whenever I'd stop by his room, I would just kind of see his notebook and see the things written. But besides that, just having a varied interest, Tyler is our spelling bee champion at Mount Sinai Elementary School. So everyone wants to give a round of applause. Pledge of Allegiance for us, but before he does, I'd like to present it with the certificate. So congratulations. Thank you, Tyler.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you. Congratulations, folks. Thank you. Tim, do you have a show up in the morning like this?
Tyler's dad, Mr. Izzo.
Good job, Tyler.
Right, so we're just going to do the approval of the minutes. Pete, you mind doing that?
Excuse me. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent and board of education, hereby accepts the minutes of the February 26th workshop meeting, February 28th, 2018 regular meeting, and the March 8th, 2018 special meeting as submitted. Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're going to start tonight with our reading presentation. So, Mr. Catlin,
Hello again.
Secretarius, Mr. LaBianca, and Superintendent.
Yes, why don't we go down below? Presentation.
And we're going to move.
You have the remote. Perfect. Good evening, everyone. We're going to be doing 3 presentations this year on our literacy action plan. We presented in November. We're presenting again tonight, present again at the end of the year. I'm going to start with a brief overview of where we were, where we are now, where we're going. I'll give a quick overview. I'll talk about the elementary school, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Pramateris to talk about what the middle school has been up to. So start with the purpose, where we were in November, where we are, next steps. We started because we wanted to get more meaningful assessment data. We right now have a pretty high opt-out rate, so you need to make sure when you have kids not taking the test, where are kids in reading, how are they doing? We also saw there were weaknesses in writing before I was here, which led to the implementation of the Columbia Writing Program. We're currently in year 3. And the information will speak to our AIS, our RTI, and how we differentiate instructions in all of our classes. Sorry. So in November, we talked about the LLI program, which we purchased as an intervention program for students in elementary and middle school. We were implementing it for the first time. We were still doing Teachers College writing, and we had just collected our initial reading levels, FANUS and Pinnell, and I'll do a quick overview of what that is again. A FANUS and Pinnell running record is a way of assessing how a student is doing in reading. The teacher reads a book with them. The teacher then asks them questions. If they get about 95% of the words right and their comprehension is strong, they can go to the next level. This keeps going on from A to Z. A being books with like one sentence, very, I like the park, I like to play, books like that. Z being, I think Hunger Games is a Z book. So it goes all the way from the easiest to Hunger Games, probably A to Z. Teacher reads the book with the student, makes check marks, then makes marks about what potentially they didn't get. For example, in this one, they said the wheel comes off the truck. So the teacher writes of and SC for self-correct. Then instead of saying the wheel rolls, they said the wheel went, goes. The teacher not only notices if they're getting it right or wrong, the teacher notices why they're getting it right or wrong. What are they doing? Are they not paying attention to the first letter? Are they not paying attention to what it means? When you do enough of these and you read with the student, you start to develop a pattern. I think the issue with him is he's not paying attention to the first letter of words. So that means that's what I have to teach him. So you can be very thorough and direct in what you're teaching students and what you realize they're doing and they're not doing. Then afterwards, you ask them some questions. Tell me about the trucks in this book. Is there anything else you know? Talk about how the truck is different from the other trucks. Why are trucks important? And you get into higher level questions that students then have to answer. I know as the years progress, I've seen more of these questions in classrooms. I saw a second grade teacher today. I started doing a really nice job in a reading group asking those high level questions like, why are trucks important? How do trucks impact you and your family? So students get used to answering those kinds of questions. They're the kinds of questions that come up on an ELA test in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. They're the kinds of questions students need to know to deeply understand a text. Then there are expectations for each point of the year, what month they're in, what level we expect students to be in. The great thing about this is, as a parent, it's very clear to say, at this point in the year, your child should be reading on an O, they're reading on an M, which means they're below. Or vice versa, they should be reading an O, they're reading on an S, they're above grade level. And then there are corresponding books that go along with these letters that you can take out from the library. I actually my wife went to a baby wearing class at the Longwood Library, which is the class how to wear babies. And when she was there, I took my son down to the library, and at the Longwood Library, they had bookmarks for each level, A to Z, and it would say all the kinds of books you can take if your kid is at that level. So if you know what level your child is reading at, you can get books that are not too hard and not too easy. So it's really great for parents, it's really clear. Scholastic's website has the same thing. And then for teachers, I know how to group them. I have a bunch of kids who are at N, they're working on the same kind of stuff, I can pull them in a group to the side. So it's really helpful for teachers too. So where we are now, I asked teachers to hand in by the end of February where the students are now from A to Z, where their levels are. 99% of the students have made progress. There are about 2 or 3 that haven't. So then again, as an administrator, that tells me we really got to focus on those kids. What's going on with those kids? Let's discuss them further. All the students in the LOI groups have made progress, so everyone has progressed. When I presented in November, I said 44% of K to 2 students were on grade level. It's now 56%. It's gone up. In the upper grades, it went up a lot more, also to 56%. It was 22, now it's 56. My hypothesis would be when the teachers and the students got used to the kinds of difficult questions they had to answer, they taught into it, the students are getting better at answering those questions, they're moving up faster. So that's good news. We're cycling new students in and out of the LOI group. So LOI is a targeted intervention. They meet 3 to 5 times a week for the students who are struggling. We have students who now are no longer below grade level. They don't need to be in that group anymore. We can pull new students in. There's only so much room, there's only so many intervention teachers, but it's exciting that we can pull kids out, put new kids in, and we're still having Teachers College writing professional development. We've had it 3 or 4 times, they're coming back a couple more times. By the end of the year, we have now shifted, next year we're shifting to a level literacy curriculum. Teachers College Writing also has Teachers College Reading. We just received the supplies, the custodians are furious at me, it is 880 boxes of books. So the great thing is there's so many books. We're just finding places to store them so we can organize them and get them out. The teachers, we visited one reading workshop school in Hauppauge 2 weeks ago. We're also going to go to Brooklyn. It was one of the snow days, so we didn't get to go. We're going to go back. There's 2 other schools, one in Plain Edge we're going to in April, and there's a couple other, maybe Kings Park, Comac we're going to visit. So the teachers have the chance to see how a reading workshop, how that level of literacy approach looks. And they also get the chance to pick those teachers' brains when they go. How do you do this? What if this happens? What do you do when this happens? And they said the ones who went to Hop Hog said it was eye-opening, they loved it, they learned a lot, and I think it helped them feel more comfortable with the change. They received the supplies. We're going to have a night in May or June where we introduce the program to parents formally. Haven't set a date yet. And also in the spring, when the Teachers College staff developers come, they're not just going to focus on writing, they're also going to introduce them to reading. So now teachers have seen it in action at the schools. Teachers have the chance to work with the staff developers in the spring. There's grade meetings where we're going over these units of study we got so we can hit the ground running next year. I'm going to turn it over to Pete from middle school.
Mr. Callen? One of the great things about working with Mr. Callen is, also Mr. LaBianca, is being able to work on this project together. When we need to talk about the similarities between the programs, and that's important for the kids to be able to have that connection between the buildings. So we also have tried to stay on the same pace as the elementary school. We finished up our next round of the F&P benchmarking for the Sinai, and basically we have seen tremendous results. I mean, it's simply said, 100% of all students that were benchmarked in the fall that were identified below grade level, which is an R or below, 5th grade, have made gains. In grades 6 through 8, 100% who have been identified below grade level that receive the LLI interventions with our reading teachers have demonstrated growth. What does that mean? Well, if you go back to that chart, in terms of the month growth, they have demonstrated from where they were in November to where they are at the end of February. They have demonstrated growth. They have gone and moved across their reading text level. 71% of grade 5 students are currently on grade level. That was a little bit of a jump from fall. Level U and above. So that means that if you go again back to that chart, they're at a grade 5, month 6, when we had finished up our benchmarking, they are at level U and above. We're continually analyzing the data in terms of, do students need it? Do parents call us now that the word's getting around? We'll benchmark a student, hey, my student's struggling. So if you have a question about what my child's level is, no matter what the grade, we now have gotten to the point where we're able to assign teachers, the reading teachers, to level students in grades 6 through 8. Again, if we meet as an IST, which is our instructional support team, it's one of our interventions. And I want to, again, really stress the fact that in the absence of the assessments, this is really important. So I'm really happy that, Mr. Brosdale and the board has been tremendous in supporting the growth of this program and giving us this identifier, because over the last 4 years, 5 years, many of you know, the state assessments really have become meaningless. And without students taking them, we really haven't had an identifier. So this has been a great tool to be able to identify and use it. Even if it's just to validate that your child is where they need to be, and there might be other factors inhibiting their progress, at least we could turn around and say, you know what? F&P tells us that they're on grade level, let's look at something else. So it's really been a great tool. Teachers have continually received the professional development with Columbia Teachers College in writing. The grade 5 teachers are slated to have another 3 before the end of the year. We started doing a cycle where the trainer will come, and it's the same trainer that we use in grades 3 and 4, again, to speak to that bridge between the buildings. It was very important to us to, when we had the trainer come in, that they work with grades 3, 4, and 5, so that the trainer can give us and see the lens between the grade levels and across the buildings. So we still have 3 more of those scheduled for this year. Our next steps, grade 5 and 6 ELA reading curriculum will be reinforced by what's called Steps for Literacy. This is basically creating leveled classroom libraries for students to select books based on their identified reading level. So now that we've benchmarked, and Mr. Callen's going to be sending me the 4th graders with a benchmark, the 5th grade teachers and now the 6th grade teachers next year, because all the 5th graders were benchmarked, will be able to say, okay, I have 10 S's, I have 10 T's, I have 10 U's, and they will now have leveled classroom libraries, which will again be, as like I say, that literacy bridge with the Teachers College, in that although we are not doing the Teachers College curriculum in reading, they will model the books that they can take home. So students will be used to taking home books that are on their level. So we're going to continue that with the steps for literacy. We're going to continue to use the F&P benchmarking as necessary. This includes any kind of incoming students to identify those who need interventions. And we're going to look to expand LLI to all students that, again, need additional support. Some of these challenges, and when I put all, is because this year what we're finding, and because it's a new program, obviously is scheduling. Right now, LLI recommends that no more than 4 students be assigned to a group. Not only that, since we're just identifying students, we're trying to group them by level. So take a regular class of 24 students. You may have 8 Z's, 8 T's, 8 U's, 8 S's. Okay? I think that added up to about 24. So now the challenge is going to be to group these students in a way where you don't oversaturate a class with a particular reading level, but that you're able to schedule them and still give them everything else they need to be able to get the intervention. So that's something that's going to drive our scheduling and our class lists for next year, is that we're really going to be looking hard at these identifiers to be able to group students, and then having these conversations with parents about, let's consider possibly skipping course for a year so that your child can meet with the reading teacher 5 times a week. Those kinds of things, those kinds of conversations. And now having the information will allow us to do that. In 2018-19, we're also going to be bringing in AimsWeb Pro, which will be used in ELA and math to benchmark all students in order to determine a level of intervention. Okay. That's pretty much it. Mr. LaBianca, if you have anything to add that I missed, I know you work greatly between the 2 buildings.
That's really been my role, is just to talk to the teachers in regards to just what their needs are material-wise, now and moving forward in next year's budget. And in regards to the 5th grade teachers who are seeing weakness, I will relay that to the 4th grade teachers and so forth, and just kind of a liaison between the buildings and between the grades. Because I've met with Rob and his teachers, or just his teachers alone, and I've met with Pete and his 5th grade teachers, and and we've also, we didn't talk about last time, we created the little reading room.
Well, yeah, that was
And that was something that Pete and I came up with.
that's where the LLI groups meet.
Yeah.
I just had 2 quick questions. One, I was just wondering when because I know there's no place on the elementary report card or middle school report card for an actual literacy level. So I was just wondering how the teachers plan on communicating where their child is at.
Yet.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yes.
There's no place yet.
Yeah, and that's something we talked about this year, that because it's new, actually the trainer from Fuentes of Pinel, they basically, when we met with them in October, said that we shouldn't be sharing levels right now with parents. We did it in December at the parent-teacher conferences in 5th grade. Teachers did, upon request, tell the parents where their child was from our October benchmarking. But as we get more comfortable with this, and as we get a couple of years worth of data, I think, then it'll become more formalized on some type of report card, or at least on some
Years,
type
you
of
think?
letter that, excuse me?
You think years?
I think in other words, we get through this year, and then as we get into next year. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I would say one of the big shifts, sorry, I'm sneaking up on you.
No,
One of
no.
the big shifts from Journey as the program we use now to a program of level literacy is there's a lot less testing.
Right.
So one of the things that becomes almost, the biggest factor in your reading grade on a report card is your literacy level on the Fantas and Pinel. So it will definitely get incorporated into next year's report card somehow. It will be the topic of conversation at conferences. It'll be there. How we're going to do that yet, we're not sure, but definitely it becomes the most important factor in how you're scoring your reading is how you're doing at that level.
Okay. And my other quick question, I was just wondering, what grade does LLI intervention start? Kindergarten or 1st grade?
1st grade.
Sweet.
In the elementary school and middle school, have you accommodated the level of reading into the building libraries? And if so, what have you done and how has that worked out?
So one of the things we faced the challenge of is there were some teachers who already had level libraries because they had the resources, and some just literally didn't have the resources to do a level library. So it was one of the things we struggled with about how we were going to incorporate the main library sectioned off a little section, but it's not enough. But luckily, we'll be able to purchase the materials for the reading program next year. It comes with a massive,
1,000 books.
it comes with, like 800
Right,
boxes. of
1,000 books per grade.
But I
Yeah.
think you're right, that was a big challenge we had, was there were some classes where you go in and books were everywhere, and some teachers just didn't have books. So it was a bit of a mixed bag.
Is it something that the existing collection in the library, is there a means?
Right, I think your question was more about the school
The
library.
school library.
Right.
Is
So-
the school library able to be leveled using, similar to what the municipal library was in our two buildings?
It could be, but it's also, there's different purposes. So the classroom library is really where you're getting what you would almost call your healthy food, like the ones that are on your level, the books that are really enriching you. Sometimes, libraries also use that. You could take out a book for fun. You could take out a book that's not necessarily level, but a book if you like sports, you have a baseball book. One of the things they say is, I liked sports as a kid. I used to read Sports Illustrated. It was probably way above my level, but I had the depth of knowledge about sports and the interest level to sustain me. So, I'm sure when I was in the second grade, I shouldn't be reading Sports Illustrated if I was leveled as a reader, but I did, and it enriched me in different ways. And I kind of see sometimes the main library serving that purpose, where a kid could just go and take out books. That being said, if you go to, for example, Longwood Library, there is a small section that's leveled. The majority is Dewey Decimal System, and it's just, by topic. So I think there's places for both.
I'm sorry, what about Foxwell and Fort Jefferson Library?
They have, yes. Port Jeff is, I go there, it's all level in terms of these reading levels. So I walk in, I know my child is at a certain letter, it says it right on the bind. And to simply answer your question, yes. Morgan O'Reilly, I know I spoke with her. We are going to create areas in our libraries that are going to be easily identifiable with stickers on the bind that say this is a level 2. Exactly that. And anything we
Sometimes the contrast is, not what you said, Rob, but the other way around, that in the library under not as supervised a situation, the student takes out an easy read and doesn't stretch. And
Correct.
sometimes we want them to pick out a topic that they would love to read and maybe even stretch and still find it to be fun.
Yeah.
Mr. Carvin, what I want to tack onto that is that in the classroom, is the teacher saying to the student, you're not, you're really, whatever, and they're picking an easy read because they have 15 minutes. Is it encouraged?
So in this kind of system, what you would do is you would get, let's say, 9 to 12 books in your book baggie, your book bin, like the books you read during independent reading time. The majority of them would come from your level. You could probably take 1 or 2 below, 1 or 2 above, but the majority would be on your level. And if the teacher's meeting with students and sees, let's say they're a level O, and they have all L level books, that would be a conversation about, actually, you should be choosing from this bin. So the teacher knows their level, the teacher knows where they should be. But that being said, again, there's, it's like your dessert. You can have some, you can have ice cream, but you shouldn't have it all the time.
Sure.
You should take easy
I
and
like
hard
a
ones.
dinosaur book, but it's an easy book.
But if that's
But I
what you
wanna
like, then we just want you reading too.
Yeah.
So it's good that you read about dinosaurs. That's great. But that shouldn't be all you read. So the
Is
majority
our-
should be.
Frank, is our collections of books, I know we keep a lot of books, can they be accommodated into an F&P level?
Well, the collection that I did, mainly is the secondary level, that's all the highest over to the right, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the library doesn't, I don't think, has enough books at the high school to address, I mean, by then, they're supposed to be.
By then,
Yeah, they should be fine.
There actually is a way through the circulation system to add on to it.
Yeah, I was going to
This
say, where's our
automatic
librarian?
destiny.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that Morgan, and we're working with, is working on, Ms. O'Reilly, is, because we also want to send home an email notification. Destiny allows you to do that. And when you'll get an update when your child signs out a book, it'll tell you the level. And even though it's not on the binding, it will, in the synopsis of what your child has checked out, it will give you the level. So 100% right, you can put it into Destiny as part of the circulation desk. So as soon as they check out a book, they'll get a weekly email blast.
And there's, you said Scholastics
Yeah.
is set up in a similar fashion, so is Morgan just ordered a ton of
Correct.
Scholastic books with
Yeah,
the
it's all level.
Scholastic dollar.
It's all leveled already.
That's all leveled already.
Yeah. If you go to scholastic.com, even if you go to buy a book, it'll tell you what level it's on.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just have a quick question about like the curriculum books. So say you're a 6th grader getting your summer reading and I don't know what the levels are, I'll just think of you're
You're-
whatever level.
yeah, you're a
And
U,
you're
Z.
reading a book that's maybe possibly above your level. Is there any,
That's something we have to look at.
For the summer reading, we had talked about in the
Yeah.
letter including a piece about the leveling, since now this is the first summer we're gonna actually have.
That's a great question. It's
So
actually
that is,
something-
that's something that you'll see in the letter that we'll send out, that we send out every year
because I
with
remember
the summer
when they were
reading program.
assigned books, it was a struggle. 'cause
Yeah, no
Sure.
more assigned. I mean, we haven't done assigned in a while. It's
Yeah,
just-
we wouldn't, but that's something that we talk about in terms of giving that chart you saw, giving that to parents, saying, this is kind of where your child should be, and if you have any questions about it, obviously give us a call, but look for this level book, and if they're struggling with it, then maybe go back a few, or if they're breezing through it, and you're sitting with them, and they're understanding, almost doing what the teacher does, then go ahead a little bit, but giving them that grid at least to look at, so they can go to the library and say, this is where they kind of should be, somewhere here.
And if it's a curriculum book, does the teacher, I guess the English teacher and the reading teacher talk a lot to figure out like how to
100%.
bridge that gap too?
Yeah, and we don't want
These are
to
all new
discourage.
conversations too.
We don't want to discourage like grade level novels,
Right.
but at the same time, having this information will allow the teacher to be able to say, we need to work at a slower pace, or at least have them maybe meet with the reading teacher to kind of backfill with some portions of the book and chunk it a little bit more, so that we're not just giving them a totally separate book, because then that doesn't lend to, you have some students who might be struggling readers, but can talk to you about what the story means and have a great verbal conversation and do well on an essay or whatever. So we don't want to discourage like, oh, you don't have to read that book, just be able to identify that they need a little support with it.
I don't know if it was on a previous slide, if I misread it. Did we benchmark, I know you had it right there. Did we benchmark 7th and 8th graders too?
Students that were in AIS or in special ed, that was part of our first presentation we did. We did not university benchmark, and I think that Mr. Campbell did a good job of kind of showing why, because of the time it takes. So what we decided was that 100% of our 5th grade, and then we'd have growing through that. So we did benchmark anybody that was in AIS, Academic Intervention Services, or special education student, they all received the benchmarking. And again, if there was an issue that came up through IST, our instructional support team, it would be now intervention. Hey, let's get the benchmark, let's see where they're at. And I gotta say, out of the dozen or so students that we've done that with, they are on grade level. It ends up usually being another issue, in terms of perhaps some further intervention needed. So at least we have that capability now to be able to use this as one of the interventions. All right. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Pete and Rob and Frank and also Dr. Timo for arranging all the training and getting a lot of materials that they're coming in now. And we knew we had to marry Columbia Reading and Writing. I'm glad we're getting to it. I think you'll see a big difference. And then we got my magic book. Feels so much better. Thank you. Thank you, regulars, for coming down again. You're even here on a makeup night. That's amazing. Same faces, no matter when we have it. Now,
You get extra credit.
if we build security, we'd have more people. But what I will be doing in the next few months, it's amazing that next month, we're only 3 weeks from our next board meeting, and that's April. Then 2 more and the year's over. But I will be addressing security to keep you advised of what's going on, what we're still working on, how far we've come, and then we'll be talking about the bond shortly as well, and then talking about the bond more as we progress towards the summer. And those of you who are understanding snow nights and days and security and sending me nice emails, I thank you so much. I don't know if sleepless nights and doing security blend too well, but it's been really interesting. And where we come, what have we done? We have to realize 4 years ago there was no security at all, and look where we are today. And the board had to make a lot of decisions and take the old roadmap of the district and change it and realize these are different times. We didn't ask for them, but they're here. So we first added the 2 guards outside, and we've been doing a lot of different stuff. First, we can't forget, although sometimes I do, we have a school resource officer. And Rob Grable and I will call Keith. For example, he was here the morning of February 15th after that terrible Florida incident. We wanted the presence of a police officer and the car out the driveway, and he'll do that for us. But you have to remember, Keith has 9 districts, 92 buildings. And as I spoke about in our last 2 meetings, response time is key. And I know a lot of you who read this, you know response time is very big. The district and the board keeping that in mind, what we have is, we have our 2 guards, one's in a truck throughout the day, roaming the campus, another one walks around the buildings, checking doors, and any kids are outside in gym or recess, he's out there with them. For example, we had classes in the elementary school outside today. We had Rudy, our outside guard, who's excellent, the unarmed guard, and we had the armed guard in the elementary who was out there as well. So anyone outside was supervised by 2 guards today, and that's how we work it. We have, if you recall, the days Fast and Furious, we added the guards. I made the announcement. 3, we'd have retired Suffolk County police officers in all the buildings. That was on February 28th. Okay? Then we also said, let's give it a week before we put the guard at the entrance on 25A, and we did that on March 5th. He's still out there. Again, I thank the community for complying, stopping, showing ID, and doing what we request. Some of our employees aren't so good as you are, but thank you so much. And we're going to be doing it and upgrading that process. Then what happened was, a lot of you were here, many people were here, the board voted to hire armed guards. That happened on Monday, March 12th. And then we started a familiar New York City slogan was, see something, say something. I'd like to thank Lynn for her, and you probably saw them outside, they're on the walls here. We're in all 3 buildings. I thought that to really get that discussion going, we should have our kids create these things. So they talk about, what does that mean? See something, hear something, say something. Because in Floyd, we did it a few years ago, but we had them printed. Kids didn't discuss it. They go, what is that? What does that mean? So in the elementary school, middle school, and high school art classes, they're preparing those things. They'll be in all 3 buildings. And it's a good discussion to have in class. All morning, we were working on lanyards and ID badges. And I'd like to thank John Colucci, who I met 4 years ago, as he did all the security in Floyd, and he has been wonderful. Hopefully in 3 weeks, we'll start taking photos of our staff. And our staff will have a different color lanyard than our students at the high school. The staff we hope to have done, hopefully in 2 months. Again, we'll be doing it DO ourselves. And then the summer, we'll work with a photographer. They'll take all the pictures of the kids, and the kids will return in the fall with ID badges in the high school. So everyone in staff will have an ID badge, all the kids will have ID badges. That's new here. And for our employees, showing their lanyard and their ID badge to the guard is a little easier than pulling out ID. So that will work hand in hand. Then the perimeter fencing, the board has been very attuned to this, and I'm going to address this in the 5-year plan and the budget tonight. Our perimeter is not what it should be, and if you look at 25A and even our entrance, there are some vulnerable spots there. But more so, if you look at North Country Road, we have post and rail. Lovely if you're a horse owner, it's great, and you attend classes, but not that safe. So you've got all the way from the doctor's house down the hill and up, we need real fence, and we need better gates, and better gates on the front end. So that's the board's priority with the perimeter. And then we have to address gates on the roads that empty out into the campus. 1 gate is up already. And then we have to address those who decided it's nice here and they like a gate out their back door, hopefully no one here does, that empties into the campus. You know, and that's the way things have been. They can't be that way anymore. So perimeter fencing, and I've said it a few times, when you come back in the fall, you're going to see a lot of changes, fencing-wise, gate-wise, ID-wise, this vacation, and I hope the announcement is going out tomorrow night.
No, but
That went out tonight? Okay, it's not going out tomorrow.
Oh, wait.
It was, I'm sorry, it was posted on Facebook. It was on
On
Facebook.
Facebook.
Okay.
On the school district Facebook
Okay,
page.
they don't listen to me, it's all right. So what's happening over the vacation is they're doing a turnaround, okay, out here. We have a gentleman in the community who's donating half of it for free. So when the guard tells someone you can't come onto campus, they can turn around. I've gazed out my window a few times, I don't do it all day. I gazed out my window and I happened to see 3 occasions when the guard turned someone around and sent them off. But it's pretty hairy turning around on that one roadway. So it'll make sense when you see it, but it's a change. If you use this place, grew up in this place, that will look different.
So it's when you pull further in,
Yeah.
where it splits off.
Oh, yeah, it is further in, and it cuts off to the right. Okay? You'll also see a guard booth coming in not too distant future, because we don't want to leave the guard out in nor'easters. As soon as we have them weekly, it's not a good sight to see. So you'll see a booth, never had that before. You never saw the turnaround before. You're going to see a difference in fencing, particularly on North Country Road, but the board is sensitive to, it's different doing what Bob calls the Lilco line along 25A versus the field and your sense of North Country Road, which I've enjoyed for many, many years, rather than putting 8-foot chain link to make it more attractive. So the board is sensitive to that fact. But you will see that, and a lot is changing. And I know just a lot of you who come onto campus and being stopped is a change. It's for me. You know, but I introduced myself to the guy when I left. I said, I'll be back shortly. When I came back, I complied, rolled my window down, ID, and that's what we did. Okay, that's the way it is, that's the way it has to be. And they radio ahead the destination. The ladies here at the doors have brand new radios on the same station as the guard saying, Mr. Smith is coming to the junior high for this purpose, middle school. And he does it. So if they don't show us, I mentioned before, we have a problem. A lot of different things happening, and a lot of things are going to happen in the future with this. So I mentioned some of these. Let me get to the next page. Driveway turnaround. New security cameras. The Superintendent's Association that I belong to wrote a formal letter this past week, sent it to New York State, and said, where the heck is all the money from the Safe Schools thing? Our own battle with that, and Ken can tell you, is how's Grand Jury doing today? No,
Wonderful,
mind, tell me
wonderful.
Ken, I'm glad you can make it here tonight after surviving that. They sent back, they'll not talk to you, send back a few months, oh, we have these questions. Send it back, wait. Oh, then what about this? Answer and send it back. We've been fighting this, what, 2.5 years, would you say?
1 year
You know
of
what I'm saying?
definite back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think 9 districts in Suffolk have it approved. 9. It's a little ridiculous. Where is that money? We want it for security. We want it for cameras. We want it for upgrades. There's no reason to hold on to it. Maybe Cuomo will move faster now that he has competition running for governor. Who knows? But waiting this long is ridiculous. But we do have cameras in the bond, and we are getting other cameras. The other things that are coming, we're hiring a mental wellness person. We'll post it in end of late April, start interviewing that person. The main intent for that person is to meet with the principals, meet with healthcare people in our buildings now, and kind of identify people maybe who are having some issues and struggles. Young men and women that we might need to talk to and spend a little more time with. So that person's hired. You're going to see that that person's salary is already included in the budget. Complete door and hardware replacement, we want to look at that and see exactly where it is. The board has talked about that tonight. We want to really perhaps step that up. We're inquiring more about the button system. You hit the button, school's locked down. Miller Place has that, and there are 4 locations throughout the building. And you hit it, the building locks, which is a pretty cool thing. So we're going to still look into that. And I went to see Steve Balone speak last week. It's the most well-attended superintendent's meeting ever, and everyone was hoping to hear something like additional school resource officers, anything like that, nothing. What came out of it said, cars will now be armed with an iPad dedicated to, when they come onto your premises, they will be able to have the ability to see inside our camera system. All right, to look into what's going on in the building. So I'm thinking, okay, so 6th precinct tells me 7 to 8 seconds to get here. Are you going to stop and check the iPad before you enter the building until you find the person? That's more time. That's more time. That's why armed guards, and i.e. Maryland, stop things quickly, are trained to go after the problem and terminate immediately. I was very disillusioned, so many superintendents, about what was not said at that meeting and what we're not getting. I still don't hear the governor talking a lot about it at this point. So we're on our own, and it costs money to do what we're doing. We opened the bid for our security cover that will stay last Wednesday. We met with that company today. You're going to see kind of a different appearance on the campus versus uniforms that you might have seen, the black, over the last few weeks. These gentlemen will be in suits, and they'll be having earpieces, and we think they fit the Mount Sinai image perhaps a little better. And I brought them through the elementary school today, and following this vacation, I'll bring them through the middle school and the high school. They're excellent gentlemen, I can just say it that way. They're somewhat a cut above of the other companies I had to deal with. So that's where we are with security. That's the update, and it's ongoing all the time, all the time. It's hardly a day we don't go by talking ID. We're getting the scholarship machine for student identification when they enter the building. If they've been suspended, don't belong, their card as they tap in will go red, and instead of green, they won't be allowed in the building. All staff will be tapping in with their new ID cards as they enter in the morning. Again, all different procedures, different looks for what's going on in the district, but that's what's going to happen. Okay? So that's where we are. And it's up to, we met about the bond. We started at 6 o'clock tonight, and a lot of that stuff was about security. Today, we're talking about security every day because it's an important issue. You know, some of you saw that another student spent his tattoo Christmas money on buying an AR-15 and 500 rounds today. His tattoo money from his mom, and bought the rifle. So even with all this going on, when will it stop? Who knows? It seems like, unfortunately, it could be an attractive thing to do for notoriety, and the media often does not help. Although they did do less in Maryland than they did with Florida, but less were killed. So why do you want to spend the time really talking about one wounded, one killed? Incredible that this is still going on. Okay, now what we have is part 3 of the budget and our last part. So thanks for hanging in there with that. And we'll try to make it as painless as possible. But the biggest effect, as you're going to see tonight, is what the board has acted on recently. One of the biggest adds is security. Okay? You have 4 armed guards, that's not cheap, with keeping the 2 unarmed that we have already, and adding a healthcare worker. So what you're going to see tonight definitely changed since January, and definitely changed since last month. And I'll try to point those changes out. This is what we're talking about tonight. Operations, maintenance, ground security, athletics, salaries, and benefits. That's the big one on the bottom. All right. So rather than kill you with all the details, in this category, we actually saved money and it went down. Okay, contraction went down just a little bit. What is the biggest driver that went down based on current prices and use of oil? Oil was down. A little bit up in electric, down materials and supplies, a little up. So we saved $64,600 in this category. Okay, thank you, Dwight. And that's the description. I'll try to get that up early. This is the big one I just spoke about. All right, equipment is going up a little bit. What is equipment? As you can tell, with 5 snow days, all of that stuff wears out, right, Steve? Wears out and has to be replaced, and that just happens. So that's up $10,000 for that. Down a little bit, contractual. Here is the jump. Adding the armed guards is the jump. We had 95 with our outside and roaming guard. Now with everyone together, it's jumped up to $400,000 for security. Materials and supplies, about the same. So if you look at it, you'll see the jump. And what is it? The new hiring and security. You pull the curve up at the bottom. What are you doing? Okay. So athletics. Scott need a little more money for his equipment and athletics. We usually deny and say no, never. Now the contractual is the biggest jump in this category. Why? Because the trainer we've had has now been put on contract. We get him from a group, they pay all the benefits. So we get him for like 40 grand. So we just moved him from one area to another. That's why it looks like a jump. Right, it wasn't salaries, now it's in contractual. Materials and supplies, up a little bit. So the big thing there was moving the trainer from salaries to contractual. And you can see the other things. Health services, there's no increase, decrease. Let me explain, that's simple. Our nurses' offices, nurses, and where our students go to school, if they're placed outside of school, we have to contribute towards the nurses' offices in those districts. So a combo, our nurses' offices, their nurses' offices, and no increase. Here's the one that I like to call the untouchable. Things we really can't control that much. The employees' retirement system, it went down a half. As Flanagan predicted, teachers' retirement system, it's at 11% this year. It was roughly 9.3 last year. So there's an increase in the teachers' retirement system. Social Security, believe it or not, went down a little bit. Health and dental, you know, health, we plan on 10% hike every year. 10%. One of the biggest things for security, as a sidebar, the security companies vying for our bid, a lot of them couldn't get the insurance to have that agency that NYSA would approve. It costs a fortune for them to be able to just, make a bid on us. So it's jumping everywhere. Insurance, that's liability, this is health. Workers' comp, a little bit higher. Unemployment insurance. We don't have anyone unemployed or on unemployment, but in case we do, we put some money in there. TSA, tax sheltered annuity, Affordable Care Act, it has to be done strictly by all of these rules and guidelines. We want to comply. So you go to these, everyone uses Seneca, and Omni is our tax sheltered person. So these guys oversee that. That went up a little bit, $1,000. So you see the increase basically due to health and teachers' retirement system is the increase there. Okay, that's tonight's coverage. This is a review. Walk down memory lane back to January. Those of you here, I know it thrills you, but we'll get through this. January, we had administrative. That was a savings for us. Why? Our legal is down. Impartial hearings, things of that nature. Legal is down, and we're happy to say that. Now, the liability insurance, differentiated from the other one, went down, not as much expected, so that was a decrease as well. This was a good month, January, because we ended up saving money. Technology, that's not Ken, That's a program called Envision. It upgrades FM, and it's the accounting software for our accounting department in the school district, puts us in the finance manager. It's a better grade, easier for our office to operate. Technology, as I just mentioned, transportation. If you've been here, a regular fan, a lot of you have, we plan 2% every year. 2% in transportation. And in debt service, the reason why there's a decrease there, our loans are coming on. So there's less money in interest. Then, okay, that was January. February. Curriculum development, our gentleman spoke to it today, Pete, Rob, everybody, about the marriage of reading and writing Columbia program. This is for more training. 10 days, 5 for writing, 5 for reading with Columbia. Supervision, Pete asked for a few desks every year. That's just $2,000 he's getting for desks. Instruction in all areas went up $2,000. The gentleman also mentioned, and Bob asked about our library. Not only are we trying to level the reading in our classrooms, we're trying to get level reading in our libraries as well. So it all works together. Co-curricular, that's a misnomer, as I pointed out. That's our college course at Stony Brook, where we work in partnership with Port Jefferson. Senator LaValle has been kind enough to give us the money to fund it. And our students, along with Port Jeff students, study on the Stony Brook campus with Stony Brook professors. And we run out of money, so I have to go visit Senator LaValle and ask for more. It's always fun. Special education, you hate to say it, but it's down a little bit. But as all of you know, it depends on our clientele. One student outside place, one student needing a lot of equipment, one student needing restructuring part of the building, that's going to jump up. Guidance, it's the Naviance system, raises a little bit of money every year. Adult Ed and Driver's Ed, we added 10 new classes this year in Adult Ed, but the people who take Adult Ed pay for it. So it's self-sustaining, that's not costing us. The census, we used to work through BOCES with our census. We do it our own now, and we save over $5,000 by doing that on our own. And what we talked about tonight, the following things: oil was down, that was primarily savings of operations and maintenance. Grounds and security, that's the big one. That's what we mentioned, what happened, that $400,000 price tag, that's the jump there. Athletics, remember that was the trainer, being changed in the category to contractual from salaries. And then health services, the nurse's office, I was saying, salary down below includes the new mental health person. Although we didn't hire that person, that's an additional person we have planned money for, but to hire them in May or whenever it happens. So on there you've got 4 armed guards additional and the salary of the healthcare person. The new budget, which made it, yes.
We also added full-time psychologists and social workers. So we went from 0.6 to
Right, thank you.
both of those. So
Right.
that means
There was a part-time position in the high school, and social work and psychologists were making them full-time to work in harmony with the new ad we're going to have. Thanks, Lynn. And so here's the difference, and this is what's changed a lot over the last few months, is that where we were with the budget this year, it said $60,469,490, which is an increase of 2.02. That sounds a lot higher. If you remember, back in January, we were advertising 0.67. But we didn't know what we were going to do, and I'm going to show you what's coming up. What, in my horror, when I see near the 2% mark, is I'm thinking, I'm glad I got 5 retirements in my pocket right now. Okay, that's not in here at all. And I know that's going to bring that down. We don't know what the state aid figures are going to be from the governor. He hasn't, but we will know in April. We'll know our final numbers in state aid. We're going to have our retirement people 5. We already have 4 for next year. The board passed a great little plan with the union, and we're going to know who's retiring this year, next year, and the year after. And it helps us budget better. But so far, as we speak, we have 5 definites for this year and 4 for next. Big difference when you have a salary of 130, 140, and then you have a $54,000 salary. So this I've shown before, but the moving number has been the appropriate fund balance. Tax levy break, it's 1.95. That sits there, that stays there. Depending on the formula from the state, that's one solid 195. Appropriate fund balance, that number of 1819 in January was 1.1. Then we decided we're going to do a few things, which I'll show you. Now, then it was 173 or whatever last month. Now it's 1.955 million out of fund balance. There's our revenue. That's the new budget, 2.02, without retirements, without final state aid figures. This is what we talked about. When I show you in a minute how dramatically the fund balance is dropping from where it was. And if you recall some of our meetings starting January, if you want to know, how does the fund balance get that big? How does it accumulate? And we spent 2 months explaining that. How it accumulates every year, money that's not spent, adds up. You can see how fast it goes when you do spend it on things that are very important. But this capital project that will happen in May doesn't cost you a thing, but we need you to vote for it because this is what it covers. And you'll see that this descriptor changed also. The high school roof. That money pays for only 1/3 of the high school roof. And I don't know, I forgot what Ed called part of that high school that leaking. You don't want to be in the art wing when it rains. And you don't want to be in the pupil personnel wing either when it rains. Rob, you could probably talk about the rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, right?
We got a good talk later around.
It's not good. That fix, we have to do that. We can't wait for a bond, which takes 2 years to do that. Then you have the turf field, which is 14 years old and in horrendous shape. The track is crumbling. And if you're going to do one, you should do both together, not one at a time. You'll wreck the other thing you did. The field events on the track, bleachers, press box, nets within the turf. What that means is, on the turf field with the fencing around it, you put up nets so people can actually use the track, do events without getting hit by things being used on the field. So you can do 2 things at once. Without it, it's very dangerous. The concrete plaza and fencing, if you know the narrow entranceway to the high school by the main entrance onto the field, we have parents, you ever go there on a football day and see what that's like? The congestion, people dropping people off, cars stopping and chatting. We do that well, we chat a lot at these things.
Where's that
And
going to be?
by, the narrow, you come from North Country, make a right. You see our nets and our field on your left?
Oh, okay.
On the right-hand side. It's right there, that narrow way. It's pretty dangerous on game day. Kids walk out, they can be hit. So that's designed to make that a lot better and a lot safer. And then finally, on the bottom, what I talked about is the perimeter fencing and gates and other security needs. $800,000 we added to it. So in January and February, we recommended that capital project to be 4.2. Right now, it's 5 because we decided, like hiring the guards and making other improvements, that perimeter fencing has to happen now. It has to happen. You have to have better gates. So why not take it from fund balance? You have 4.2 anyway. We need this to get done now, add it on, and have the 5 million. Okay?
What's the relocate field events?
Brad?
What is the relocate field events?
The things, track events that are inside the track,
Is within
jumping.
the field where the turf is. They were add-ons. They will be relocated outside of the stadium, if you will, so that they are all together.
Drive by and take a look on your left, all those, the crummy area, that whole area. Sorry about that. That's what they are. You'll see them. They really don't make sense where they are. Okay? So
It
that's,
was in the summer when they were doing the kids track and field,
Yeah.
they took a stab at it, it was not good.
Not fun.
all right. Now, some key numbers that have changed on the 5-year plan outlook, which we show every month. Back up on top, increase in the budget. What it did show in January, I mentioned, was 0.67. What it shows, as we just concluded, is 2.02. The only thing that makes you feel better is the retirements, the state aid, that we'll definitely know. And as we go through our future, the large sizes leaving our district and class is getting smaller. That means accessing bodies, but the way you really save money, you can cut programs, you can cut sports. It's bodies that save you money. Revenues, that stayed the same. Now the appropriations I mentioned to you, again, I'm under 21819 appropriations, 1955, that was 11, that went to 17. But as we increased our security needs, it's at 1955. Tax levy stays the same. Let's go down to fund balance. Look, I'm going to direct your attention to the bottom. Now, transfer to capital project. I just showed you that page, right? There's the 5 million. The one-time 5 million was 4.2. That comes right out of the fund balance. So here you have 16.7 that's slashed in half. So you're down at 8.1%. Now, what's the state legal quiz? 4%, okay? And but they've talked about 6, 8, perhaps. But look at where we go down to 8%. And that's this year, by the way. At the end of this year is 8.1. Next year, it's 5.5. And you'll see again, please look at the transfer to capital and then capital reserve. If we find we need more improvements, more safety things, we have the money to do it if we're able to put 200,000 aside each year.
But the factor is important, it's correct to say, as we come into 1819, 5 retirements could realize at a minimum of 700,000 back, with assuming every single one is replaced.
Is that hard, right?
So there's potential for changes in those numbers where you may find that 8.1 may go up to 9 or a little above 9 going forward.
Right.
Would that be accurate?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
We're hoping, again, we wanted to show it without the retirements, the way it is right now, with where we're putting money, the security we're focusing on, and how it's affecting the fund balance. And you'll see it decrease, and you'll see it roll out. And, you know, we talk about where we're breathing easy for now, which is 3 years. Easy or uneasy, however you want to breathe. But what we're hoping is retirements this year, retirements next year, state aid, and where we can access people, that picture will start looking different as we go forward. But, you know, it looked better last month, looked great in January, but what are you going to do? Are you not going to make the security upgrades? Are you not going to make the repairs we need to do? You have to. You have to. We didn't ask for it. It's here in front of us. This is reality. And we've been so fortunate for so long, so we didn't need a lot of this stuff. And it's here. So that's the look. And next month, in April, I'm really trying to entice you to come back, is we will put in the retirement figures and we will put in the real state aid figures so we're not guessing. Now you got to keep in mind, we guesstimate a lot for this whole thing. And if you want to say next one is more of reality than what we can guess, we go from there. But please remember, we need you to help out because you guys are the stalwarts here. You come all the time. You got to tell friends, when this capital project vote comes up in May, it doesn't cost them anything. It gets us stuff done that we need to get done, and we need it higher.
Does the capital reserve vote just need 50%?
I'm sorry, did you
Yes,
catch
it's
that?
going to need just 50 for the six.
Same day, right? Same time. Yeah. Okay. Monica?
Just a question. So you said the insurance went down, so there was no increase to the insurance as a result of the armed security guards?
No,
No.
there was no increase because of that.
Because, okay, I know that was an
Yeah,
open
they,
question.
what NYSER wanted was, they wanted to see what they have in insurance, and I can tell you, so I'm speaking daily with the owners of the new company. He was saying, that this has got to work for us, because you cannot imagine what this company wants in insurance, and I'm paying for it. So NYSER has to like what they have. We had that armed guard group we had first, when we first placed guards in the building, everybody loved that. And they were very kid-friendly, they were appropriate for the high school, the middle school, the elementary school. They were great guys. But their company, we said, you got to get insurance.
Armed guard.
Are you
They had
going
insurance,
live?
But they didn't have armed guard insurance.
No. They had armed guards, but we didn't hire them as armed guards.
The proposed company on the agenda tonight, does their insurance name the district as an additional named insured?
Yes. Yes, yes.
Based on the contractual, is there a contract with them that requires that?
Yes, it's in the bid. We gave them requirements that they have to meet, that we sent through NYSER, and they say that they have to have us as additional insured, and they have to sign something that says we're harmless.
It's just a glitch that if your agreement with the company does not spell out that they are to provide you as an additional named insured in the endorsement, the policy will say if contractually required, and that's how they get around it. So you have to look for if contractually required, and that your contract, not just your bid, and your bid may say that your agreement with what they're doing covers that it is contractually required that they provide additional insured.
Okay.
You'll be
Double
looking at
check
that, and you'll be signing all that. She'll be meeting with them and going over all that the next few days. So thanks for that heads up. Questions? Yes.
Sorry.
So is the security company that we currently have changing to a new company?
Yes.
Yep. When we had first, the armed guards couldn't get the insurance. We would have loved to have kept them. Everybody liked them in the buildings. They couldn't get the insurance. We had to let them go. Replaced them with this group. We have the same one Miller Place has. Miller Place seems to be continuing with. I had some things I wasn't really happy with. And it turns out, I had some issues I had to supervise and complain to them about, which I shouldn't have had to do. I'll say it that way. And they didn't put in a bid, surprisingly enough. They led us to believe they would. But God works in strange ways, and I think the company we're bringing in, when you come back and see them, I think we'll be very pleased with what we have.
So this is the same company Miller Place has, or it's a different?
No.
The new one is different.
No, I'm not telling them, No.
When is that effective?
April 9th, Monday. They already met with us today. I've spoken to them every day since last week.
And so,
The cameras, you're talking about getting security cameras, like who's watching them, or how's that all working out?
Okay, this is another thing the board's been discussing about supervision of the cameras. The elementary, I took the guards in there today. They actually have a monitor in the office. And I said to the ladies there, do you really look at this and watch this? They go, yes, we do. And it has various cameras, and Ron can tell you, the cameras throughout the building on that monitor. We do not have them per se in the office in the high school and the middle school, but we have some ideas of dealing with that. Some board members talked about, do we want a monitor person? Are there positives and negatives to that? About someone supervising, and they have to be very well trained to watch monitors all day. I would never want that job, but they are trained to do it, and they need rest periods and everything else to know what they're looking at. There are alternatives. I know what Miller Place does. I'm not saying this is the best, but now all of our administrators have access to all the cameras, okay, to begin with. But you can give them one large video screen. Ken, are we talking about that? I did a little bit. that would be next to their computer, which would have every camera in their building on it. And that's a start, similar to what the elementary school has. But it's real, that's a whole new thing. Do we have the capability of doing it? Yes. So it's not a no on how we're going to do it. I think the board needs to have a little more discussion on that, and I think we will. You know, I'm happy I have it in elementary school. I'm kind of happy that we have, where I saw it work with a central monitor at a big desk was in William Floyd, and they had 8 buildings. Imagine all the cameras in 8 buildings in a high school that housed 3,000 students. We're kind of smaller and more compact, so that is an advantage. But do we do it within? Do we hire a separate monitor person? You know, as we go, you can see we're doing a lot. So as you go step by step, you have to decide, oh, you're down by 2 right now. Well, we've got so much to think about in reconstructing our buildings, how we make them safe, who we're hiring, and you can only do so much at a time. So we will keep that in mind. And we do need the better cameras. Even when you look at the fact that the police are going to have this iPad, we know there are cameras that have to be upgraded. You want them to be able to see, you get better visuals inside the buildings. So when we finally get that money and the other money, that's a major upgrade to cameras. And the schools need them and want them better. They're all shaking their head. You know, you need them. We put good ones in the cafeteria in the middle school, new, brand new, which the cameras that are available now versus cameras that were available 10, 15 years ago are amazingly different. Right, Ken?
Sure.
They make a big difference, the new technology. We're going to be doing it.
More questions. On the security guards, there's 4 armed and 2 unarmed. The 2 are the ones that have always been here. They just kind of go around the campus.
One is in the black truck, it says Mount Sinai Security all day. I see him as I go around the campus all day. He's going to building to building to building and driving around the back of each building. Rudy is on foot, always has been, will be where school starts, the school closes. He'll check parking lots, but one of his main roles right now is checking every outside door in all 3 buildings. Make sure they stay shut, and we need to find those people who might be jamming something and keeping a door open. And I have my eye on one location right now and already told the director.
And are they school hours, or all the guards just during the school hours?
They go this way. The person at the gate starts at 9:30.
Okay.
You know, then he goes, you know, at 1:30, he stands out there, he's going to run over by 8 buses. So we send him to the high school, because the high school is crazy after school with athletic events and students. So now we have a guard, really after hours, when games come in and all that stuff's going on. But he gets off at 5:30.
Okay.
9:30 to 5:30. High school main guard, armed guard starts at 7 in the morning. The main guard in the...
Meeting, not discussing this in a Facebook or a
Yeah, that's
down
what
one.
the...
We may be presenting some of our security out that we should.
Yeah. You understand that?
Yeah.
Archive.
Yeah. They work 8-hour days, start at various times.
The silver car that's separate from 800 to 230?
Yeah,
So no problem, that's all.
no problems.
In addition to all the preventative measures being taken, has there been any talk about possibly adding an EMT person in the event, God forbid, there was an event, besides just the school nurse helping with, let's say, a mass shooting? Only one person. The staff can be trained how to like stop the
Well,
bleed or
Pete
bleed
probably
control
could
force.
answer about EMT better than I can, but I'll tell you what, our class, Dr. Timo's arranging a active shooter thing after the fact for our faculty, and I was just offered today an active shooter drills for preventative reasons today. Because the aftermath, is Alone pointed out, showed on video, is very important that you don't have someone pulled inside bleeding to death.
Right.
Well, because police go forward. They just go forward and their bodies are aside. And they showed us cases where someone bled in a room for 2 hours and passed away, and they wouldn't have
Exactly.
had there been attention.
One of the suggestions that has been brought up, Lynn talked about it some time ago, that in conjunction with Port Jefferson Ambulance and the Mount Sinai Fire Department, they have talked to us about stocking a closet with necessaries to address something like that, even if it's, you know, there was an accident on the property or something like that, that what we have here is not sufficient. And by the time there's a response, they may not be bringing enough. That working in conjunction with our neighbors, that we would look at stocking an emergency closet, but then it requires to keep it rotated so that we have the proper material that may be more useful for a lot of reasons. And that may be something we want to look ahead with what the fire department suggests to us to have, what the ambulance crew suggests for us to have. Just for example, at a gate, that, you know, the ambulance may have so much material, but we should have our own. And that may be something we look at as a board to supplement.
I know 3 Village School District stocks in their EEPs a bleeding control kit. And that's very handy and it's very simple to get. And it has special clotting gauze, a special tourniquet that's like an Army-style tourniquet. And even if the staff is aware and they've been trained, when it actually happens and you're kind of a lay person to that, it's very different than being a trained professional that knows how to do this. So that's my concern. Maybe even if we could just get bleeding control kits and put them, stock them in the AED cabinets. There's really good equipment in that.
Yes,
There's 3 villages using it if you want to use them as a contact.
There have been a few community members who are teachers, and in their school, just like you said, they were trained in stuff already.
Yeah.
We had brought that up here, and it's not difficult to train someone in quick clot and how to apply a tourniquet. Not that people would be necessarily like pros, like you said, if God forbid something happened. But it is something that's doable to teach people how to do and teach our staff and staff, like you say, staff certain places in all of our buildings with these
Right.
you know, with these items.
And if you know where your AEDs are, that's usually a great spot because they're throughout the building. And if you can, the nurse can tell someone, just grab it out of the AED box. And it's small enough to fit in there. Just a suggestion, but I think it's very useful until EMTs get there or paramedics or somebody. Because you could save many lives doing that in 2 minutes. Thank you.
One of the problems that we encounter a little bit is our teachers will be in lockdown with their students.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the teacher has supplies in her room and something happens to one of her students, obviously she can take care of that. But it appears anyway, that we're going to have to be training our other staff, even more so, because of the fact that they are the ones who are free. And you know, our custodians, our clerical, our principals, and our, you know, and so on. So that this might be an area that we're going to have to work on. There are some courses out, and Suffolk County has a coordinator for this, and I'm going to be speaking with him in a day or so. And they have go bags that they suggest that you pack with these certain things, you know. And I just think that it's a preparedness thing that we have to make sure that we train the right people who are willing to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Because my daughter, who's a teacher, has been a teacher for a long time. If she had to encounter that blood, she would probably pass out on top of the kid.
Exactly. That's why I was asking about.
You know, so that it's something we need, just the same as when we did first aid and AED training. Now, everybody got that, and everybody seems to get that. It's, you know, we could do CPR, we could do this, that, and the other thing. But this is more dramatic and requires more rapid thinking. I mean, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to slap a big thick dressing on wherever it's bleeding, and you're going to press down really hard. And you'll probably need somebody else, if it's an arm or a leg, who could do the tourniquet. And, and you'll keep on, and then you can pile some more on, and you can have somebody stay there with the pressure while you move on to the next victim. But it does require outside people who are not locked down, because we can't let our teachers out of those classrooms until we know that the building is stable. So, I mean, certainly, I'm a proponent of this kind of thing.
Right.
And we just have to figure out the right way to do it.
Yep.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay. Moving on to where to do. Thank you.
So we have another question and answer time. If you have any questions or concerns right now related to the agenda, now is the time we would encourage you to come forward. Unless we
Well, we have a question about the gates on like the border of Bodoni. The gates that are on the fence line, on the elementary school side of the ground. Are you closing those gates? Those people who live there, obviously their kids cut through the gates to come to school. You're going to close off those gates. Those children are afforded busing because, they walk to school now. They're not going to walk down 25A to come to school if they're in second grade.
Everybody gets busing.
Everybody gets the busing, and is there going to be a letter that goes out to those parents, or letting them know, or how's that going to be informed, or?
It's my impression that they were going to be lockable gates. Right now, they're just open
Yeah,
spaces.
they're open, yeah.
So when we look at replacing those fences, that they will be lockable gates that are roving guards that lock during the school day and unlock.
So they'll be
That
open.
would be because there's also access purposes for emergencies,
Right,
things like
yeah.
that. Other schools use turnstiles that can be electronically bolted during the school day. It's not going to be eliminated, but probably would be eliminated on the private gates that are
Right, okay.
up and down behind the backyards, but that's,
Is that okay, Mom, to post that?
I won't post it till it's
Yeah,
final.
that's okay.
Hi, Brett.
So for the calendar, for next year's calendar, no, thank you, busing question.
No, the bus action.
Oh, no, that comes later.
Okay.
The school year calendar seems to be getting
Later.
later and later every year. I think I said the same thing last year. It seems like summer is eroded every year. What can we do so that kids actually have a meaningful summer and they're not going, it seems like it's going to slip into July, for example.
What you could do is, when that is announced, you could write a letter to the commissioner. You can start there. The Superintendent Association has, because why are you ending school on a Wednesday, not on a Friday?
And what
Makes
the
no
difference
sense,
is those
and
three
it
extra
changes how you plan. School ending on that Wednesday versus Friday will make us rethink graduation, will make us rethink the prom. No one wanted that. And there's a great deal of uproar about it and protest. Will it change their mind? I don't know. The state does seem to be adding more hours and it is getting later, I agree. But it's causing a lot of problems. So people are protesting it for whatever good that does.
So this is a statewide end date, yes?
This is based on the regions then? Yeah, right. So the regions usually, well, it's a long time ago when I graduated Ward Melville, but the regions used to start around the 5th and go for 2 weeks. So that would be ending on the 21st. Are they extending the regions examinations, or are there that many more regions?
They happen that week. I think they go, I don't have the regional schedule in front of me, but I think they run the Monday and Tuesday, I believe. So, and then, when always is physics.
The last one.
Physics. Okay, I don't
So
worry
I'm
about that
telling you
here.
that we are as upset as you are right now because we have to really talk about it. As a board, we haven't even approached, if that is firm, are we going to graduate them Thursday, Friday?
I mean, because it also messes, the week between school ends and camps. I mean, okay, our kids are age groups. They usually have the sports, baseball and lacrosse are that week, and then following, Mount Sinai Kids Camp. So that postpones every one of them, pushes everybody back. And I know the state doesn't care, but, that's...
It really is questionable what they did there. It really is. It's affecting everyone. Sorry about that.
The option is to start school in the last week in August, but it defeats the same purpose because you're eating away at the other end.
Right.
And you're taking that portion away. If you notice at the bottom of each of the calendar for the school year, there's a number 18, 22, 16. That's the number of instructional days. And we worked very hard over the years our instructional days are 185 days. So that's why we have the flexibility of 180 instructional days, plus we have 5. So we have built into our calendar 185 days where we can accommodate up to 5 days of emergency days. Those were increased a few years ago after we experienced Sandy and had so much difficulty with getting started back up, had power outages, that we added an additional, it's actually a superintendent's conference day with the teachers union so that we can have 5 on top of the middle.
Don't the teachers, if they don't use all the snow days, get checked too?
Correct. But we used all 5 of ours. We're one of the few districts who don't have to get back in days now for spring break, so. So that wasn't our fault, Brett. That was really the state dictated that, and it wouldn't matter when we started in August. It's unlikely in my 30-something years of SCD that they change anything, because already they have the region schedule set. You can go on their website and they'll tell you what day and what time every region is for the high school.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to start our regular agenda. We'll go to personnel with instructional, Carrie. Sure.
Leave of placement teacher. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointment. Jennifer Cavalier, March 22nd, 2018, as elementary teacher at Step AMA.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Ed, non-instructional.
Non-instructional appointment. A, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointments for Paula Lampwater, Christina MacArthur, and Donna Symington, all effective March 26, 2018, as an aide, step 1.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Pete. Any comments?
Quick comment, Maureen, will you please note for the record that I'm abstaining on Paul Lampard.
Then we have to vote separately. You want to abstain? Do that? Okay, we'll do Paula Lamparter. All in favor? Opposed? Abstain.
Maureen, please denote my abstention, please, for Paul Lampard.
So that's 2.
didn't see it. but,
Did you abstain from that one? Sorry.
I did.
That one, okay, so it's 2 abstain, okay. 5 in favor, it's carried. Christina MacArthur, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Nana Symington, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Okay, volunteer coach, Mike.
Sure, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointment. Sorry, Jeff Custantino, March 22nd, 2018, volunteer girls golf coach.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Bob, special ed?
Committee on Special Education resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent. Board of Education has no objections to the following special education recommendations and approves the authorizations for the funds to implement the special education programs and services consistent with such as listed below.
Second. Thank you, Lynn. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Lynn, 25A?
25A, entrance reconstruction. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby authorizes Superintendent Gordon Brosdale to execute an agreement with Adjo Construction Incorporated for reconstruction of the District's 25A entrance to accommodate enhanced security protocols.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Obsolete equipment,
Excuse me, obsolete equipment, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby declares the following items as obsolete and authorizes disposal as listed.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Carrie, budget hearing?
Notice of budget hearing, budget vote, and election. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the publication of the notice of budget hearing, budget vote, and election for the May 15th, 2018 annual meeting as attached.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Ed, calendar?
2018-19 school calendar. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the attached calendar for the 2018-19 school year.
I second that.
I'm going to take B. Thanks, Pete. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Mike, scholarship?
Sure, scholarship. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the inclusion of a scholarship for a graduating senior in the amount of $250 from Maria Samore, non-Sinai Recycling Project Scholarship.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments?
One comment, thank you to Mrs. Seymour for her generosity to the district.
Maria is a longtime aide, has been with the district for a long time. Both of her daughters, one has graduated, one is presently in the school, and I think that's very generous for her family to be giving that scholarship.
Very kind, yes. Thank you, Mrs. Moore. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Bid award? Bob?
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby awards the bid for armed security guard and patrol protection security. The lowest responsible bidder in the amount of $41.66 per hour per guard for the 2017-18 and 2018-19 school years. Said services shall commence April 9, 2018.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments?
Just a comment that I asked during the question and answer period that Linda answered that their contract should conform with the requirement of additional named insured, and that we have a contract that requires that and triggers that requirement.
Okay, you got that one? Yes. Okay, great. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Lynn, policy amendment?
Policy amendment. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the first reading of the amended reimbursement for expenses regarding conferences, conventions, workshops, and meetings policy as attached. I'm not going to read it because you can.
Seconded.
It is all there.
Second, all in favor?
This was just done really to align the reimbursement with the actual separate bargaining unit contracts, so that it was just like, this is not it, it's somewhere else. So, any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right, we are now opening up the floor to any other questions or comments about anything in the district. Please yell it out. Go ahead.
So last week, there was an accident with one of the buses. What is the policy for notifying parents when their children are affected with that type of accident? And this is because my son wasn't on that bus, but it was his bus, so he was delayed quite a bit. We didn't get any phone call from the district about that particular incident.
So who do you want to answer? Did you hear what?
Yes, our policy is usually we do call the parents, but I didn't know that it would affect, he wasn't on the bus.
He wasn't on the bus, but his bus was delayed.
It was bus O, it was his bus that was in the accident, so they had to wait for somebody to come finish their run and come back and pick those kids
Come
up.
back for a different school.
Yeah.
Right, it was a high school
okay.
bus, he's in the middle school.
Right, it was a
His-
ripple effect.
Usually they call the parents, the principal's office calls the parents and let them know. That didn't happen,
No.
I'll have to look into that.
Okay.
Right, I think a number of the buses were delayed because my daughter's bus was delayed as well by about 15 or 20 minutes. And I heard about the bus accident through Facebook.
Yes, us too. Yeah.
And although it didn't affect the middle school students, just the high school students cascading down just delayed that bus from completing its route, and then that affects the middle school and elementary school schedules. And I think that's the point you're making.
Yes, I got a phone call from my wife of, the bus just went by and Thomas is nowhere to be seen, what's going on?
But
So-
that ended up being the high school bus.
So that was the high school bus that
That
should
went
have.
up by half hour later, so I just happened to look at Facebook and saw that someone had posted that there was an accident, hope everybody's okay, but no bus number or letter. So then I had heard from a neighbor that it was bus O, at which point, your heart sinks, says that kid, my bus, my kid on that bus, and then, he walks in a half hour later. Happens to be that my daughter's bus driver was the one who went back to school to get the bus out to bring them back, and then went back to pick up my daughter, who was 15 minutes late to come back.
Usually they call. I'm surprised when there's a robocall that goes out.
Yeah,
So-
the notification the district provides is usually so good.
Mhm.
The fact that we didn't get a call for something like this was out of the ordinary.
Yes, I know.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay.
The mental health professional that's going to be hired at the additional person at the high school, that's not going to be a psychologist or a social worker, or is that?
It is. It is. It may be a combination of both. Believe it or not, the social worker actually exists, that position. So we'll see what the resumes bring. We'll advertise both. We want the best possible person. They have advantages, both a social worker and a psychologist have particular advantages. Psychologists being medical and what they can do themselves, as you probably know, Ben, you're in the area, but what they can do with testing, speaking to doctors and the rest. However, our social workers often are a great resource. Kids feel very comfortable speaking to them versus a psychologist. So we want to get the best person, not necessarily looking at what they're called, but what is their experience, what is their education, and what can they offer us. We'd be pretty picky with that.
Anyone else?
I don't want to open a can of worms, just one little thing. And the principals have gone now anyway, but the whole thing about people opting out of testing, like the kids that are coming through the elementary school, are the numbers of opt-outs lower in the younger grades so that this will just phase out, or is it through the whole board? Do you guys know roughly from last year, or?
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just curious whether it is starting to.
Oh, are the numbers are enrollment, or the opt-out numbers? Yeah, I can actually tell
Opting
you.
out, like, the younger kids opt out less more than the older ones that are going.
You know, I don't want to curse us. They're a little down compared to the past, but we're still 32-35% as of today in grades 3-4. I didn't get the middle school report yet, but 32-35% right now.
Is that
That's opting out. You know, we've been watching that because I've been wondering the same thing. I don't even know if people know why they're opting out anymore.
Well, yeah.
You know, if they really know what it is. And
Yeah.
I've said, here's an example in the past. We've had parents drop letters off. They had kids in the elementary school drop a letter off, went to the middle school, drop a letter off, and wanted to exempt the third child from the Regis exams. Unfortunately, they didn't graduate.
I do think, though, there's a lot of teachers who live in the community, so that's probably why.
But it's still not attached to teachers' grades or ratings at this point.
Yeah,
It won't be
so-
for a number of years. So, you know, is it habitual? I don't know what the reasons are. But the state is going to make it the responsibility of the district to get 95% of the kids back in the testing. Now that's going to happen, I have no idea. The state has tried through making testing less questions on the tests, and all these other things, but people are still opting out. They go, we don't know what to do, so we're going to put it on the district. It's interesting. So the question is, what will bring the kids back in to be tested, so we have another source of information on what kids can or cannot do.
Just a clarification, the construction on the April vacation is for the turnaround at 25A. You mentioned a guard booth. Is that construction planned for over the summer, or you don't know yet if the...
I would imagine that would be summer
Okay.
at this point where we sit, because it's coming quickly. What we'll do, getting that in, the installation of that first. So here we are going to the second week of April with that, firming up the plans with the guard booth. And ordering the guard booth, I know it takes a while for it to be constructed. We're going to have it delivered constructed. We're not actually building it ourselves here. So I have to see when that is available and when we get it to put in position.
And you mentioned the turnaround construction. You said 50% of that they were donating?
Yeah.
The cost?
Adjo.
Adjo was donating 50%. Okay. That's good to advertise.
Well, we try. I thought that was a good idea if we asked him
Yeah.
to give us his ideas.
Yeah.
And one last thing, carry over from last week, I did meet with Mr. Pramateris regarding lockers, et cetera. And we had a long, fairly wide-ranging conversation about the overall needs of the middle school, and replacement of lockers would tend to help that issue, and that's planned. So it was a productive conversation.
Glad to hear that. Thank you for that. Those are all lockers.
Any other questions, concerns? It's almost spring break, so. All right, thank you for coming. Motion to adjourn?
So
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ed. Second?